Hey, everyone, it's me, Andy Hall. This is the After Party After Show. Did I put the link? Did I put the right link in the description? That's the question, right? I think I did. Hopefully, I did. All right. Yes, I do see the link in the description. Hopefully, it's the right link too. If it's not the right link, I'm sure I'm going to be told within a few seconds. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. That was a fast show. That was a fast show. I hope I did, and there's a bunch of stories that I don't think I did. There's at least one video I didn't share with you, which I thought I was going to share, but I didn't have a chance to. So Jesse Bear, hope you're doing well. And once again, congratulations on your shot. Yeah, so I hope everyone's doing okay. I'm doing okay. What am I doing this weekend? I'm glad you asked. I've been told I'm going asparagus. I guess this is the season for asparagus. I don't know. I'm going out to the central part of the state Massachusetts, where there's a big, oh, hey, Rage. Rage, what you just did, sir, is that you just saved me from having to talk about asparagus.
I do what I can.
Thank you. Because I don't want to talk about asparagus, brother.
That's one thing I tried it once in my life, and I don't like the asparagus.
Yeah. Yeah. So how you doing, man?
Pretty good. I think I've got my OBS under control. Yesterday was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, trying to run a live show, can look easy at times, but it's not.
This is well, especially for hey Sammy, how you doing?
G'day, guys.
Yeah, especially if you're using something really complicated, which I only use StreamYard. Anyone who knows me knows I'm an technical incompetent, and I hope that people just tune in because they like the cut of my jib.
Yeah. OBS is it's a different animal for sure, and I have it pretty much figured out. For some reason, I had these super old settings, and at one point, my microphone got deleted out of those settings, and I can't figure out how to put the microphone back in. And when the microphone got deleted, it somehow messed up the display capture. So as I was obliterated OBS, and I forgot about that old setting, I went to the old setting, set up everything. I spent an hour and a half setting up the stream, getting all the things into the OBS that I needed, and then nobody could hear me. So I was like, oh gosh, I hate it sometimes. But then if it was easy, then it wouldn't be as satisfying probably.
Oh yeah. So I listened to about half an hour of the show, but how long did the whole thing? And let's back up for a minute. You were doing kind of like a documentary, right, on the 12 tribes.
Well, yeah, that's how I wanted it. I wanted it to kind of be like a live documentary type stream. So I had images, I had clips and articles all prepared, and then so when the OBS messed up, I went to a very basic thing to where I was just pretty much reading my script and just having that one little picture up. And then outside of that, the fact that I do have OCD, so when the OBS messed up and things didn't go as planned, it totally threw me off. So I was kind of fidgety and nervous, and like I really even shouldn't be doing this. I should have just canceled and done it when I was ready to do it. So I put it on unlisted, but yeah, I'm just gonna redo it and give it the justice that it deserves. It's too important a topic to let a bad stream ruin it.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever saw that movie Midsummer, but it's about a tribe of crazy white people up in the Arctic Circle in Sweden. But when you showed that clip of the members of the 12 tribe cult like dancing around in a circle, I'm like, yeah, that's creepy.
Well, yeah, and see, a lot of people probably have seen them before, but they just automatically, in my ignorance, I just always thought they were Amish. They had the beards, they had the really simple clothing. We do have Amish here. So for the longest time, which they don't go out often, they stay on their compound, right? But when they do go out, I've seen them several times, and I just never, hey, that's the 12 tribes. I just like those are some Amish people,
Right.
and they're a little a different. They're different.
I remember going to a restaurant in Jamaica Plain, which is part of Boston. This is when I was married about 20 years ago. And we were sitting down having a meal with some of my wife's ex-wives, then wife, friends. And they're nice liberal people and everything. And I'm reading through the fucking menu, and I look in the back, and it's like, oh, this is a cult. This is the reason why the wait staff all look like they're fucking Amish. Nothing wrong with Amish people, don't get me wrong. But it's like, I can't fucking eat here. It's like, why can't you eat here? I'm not giving money to these people.
I think that's why they settle in like college campuses, because to college kids, they're just some hippies. They're wearing the burqas and they got the long hair and the ponytails with the big beards, and they're talking peace and love, man. Let's play some acoustic guitar, and here, have some of this tea.
Yeah. Who else was a hippie? Fucking Charles Manson. That's who was a fucking hippie too.
Man,
true story.
Jesus was a fucking hippie, man.
Yeah, Jesus was a hippie. But true story, I am a Tate. Sharon Tate is a relative of mine, was a relative of mine. And Charlie did say if he ever got out of prison, he's killing all of us Tates. So, I'm looking forward to that day.
You're on the list. You gotta put that on your resume.
Yeah, but she was like a really distant cousin, I think. But she was part of our family.
So Jesse Bear is wondering, are the 12 tribes like Anabaptist, like Amish? How would you categorize?
They consider themselves Messianic Christians. So they're Torah keeping. They follow the Old Testament, and they believe the Old Testament. So if the Old Testament says women are subservient to men, well, women are subservient to men. If the Old Testament says use the rod on your children, they go get a cane, they dip it in cedar so the wood hardens, and they use the rod on their children. And some of the children some of the adults that have come out and talked about it said, usually before the age of 4, they'd get 30 fucking beatings a day with this rod. 30 a day. Wow. Anybody in the community can beat your kid. Anybody.
Yes.
If they feel like your kid is being disrespectful, they can take the rod to your child. Anybody in that community.
There's a podcast I listened to called The Dig, and it's a big liberal. It's the subtitle is, oh damn it, the discussing the politics of class warfare. It's a nice lefty podcast, very smart, done by a guy in Providence, and he was doing an episode about hippie communes in California during the 60s and 70s, or at least the topic was broached. And it turns out that a lot of these hippie communes during the 60s and 70s were not only racist, but very patriarchal at the same time. So this conception that we have of hippie culture, it's much more nuanced and a lot of dark areas there.
Oh yeah, and in the stream yesterday, I couldn't give it justice because I couldn't include the images of it, which is always important to have the images. You need an image to go with what you're saying. So the 60s counterculture of the hippies in California especially was unique and not what we think it is. There was a lot of free sex, which you hear about the free sex, but everybody associates it as this great thing. Hell yeah, free sex. Well, no, it brought a lot of unwanted pregnancies. It brought a lot of STDs with it. Drug experimentation. Most liberals are for legalizing drugs, but when you are having a movement that is experimenting with drugs, well, then drug dependency comes along with that. So at the end of the 60s, after the 67 Summer of Love, when there's like this massive migration of hippies to California, a new breed of hippie was able to come in, an evangelical Christian hippie who was all about God, free love. We're going to be all family under Christ. And these hippies who were starting to see, hey, this lifestyle just isn't as fulfilling as I thought it was when I was younger. Well, now, hey, we can go right over here. We can live the same lifestyle, but not have all that negative shit, not have the drug dependency, the free sex. It's still the same, but now we're just hippies for Christ. And they call that the Jesus movement. And the coin Jesus freaks was actually termed by those hippie Jesus freaks in California in the 70s.
You're going to take the worst parts of hippiedom and the worst parts of Christianity.
Yeah.
And what happens when you match them together?
Yeah,
It's like shit
it
sandwich.
creates modern California.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the series that you're doing on that, man.
Yeah, it'll be. I think it'll. I should have done it as videos anyway. It deserves the justice to take the time and to do it right. And I was just super excited. I finally finished my research, and I'm like, I gotta talk about it now. So I rushed into it, and then OBS happened. So
Well, I
So,
think that's the
are
thing
you,
about. Oh, go ahead, Sammy.
are you saying they gave up the best parts? The sex and the drugs?
pretty much, yeah.
Religion poison.
As I cough on my my bowl, it didn't turn everybody. Like everybody, of course, didn't go, hey, yeah, Jesus, wow. But it did work on a lot of people, and you do like a lot of. I've never been to California, but a lot of people that I know that have been to California always comes back talking about the weird ass people in California. Well, this is a big reason for that.
Right. I think Glenn's mic. I think he's moving around. So I'm gonna. All right.
Hello.
Oh, hey, Glenn. How you doing?
Hey.
Sound like you were moving
Good.
around a bit.
Yeah, I stepped into a conversation. I'm sorry, I didn't know what you guys were talking about.
We were talking about the 12 tribe cult, and the Rage did a video on them yesterday, and they're the cult with the hippie deli.
A what? I've never even heard of them.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the Yellow Deli is what it's called, and yeah, it's on a lot of college campuses, and it's ran by a cult, and it's a recruiting center for the cult.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, when I was in London that time, when I was a kid, when I was like 18, I got the Moonies tried to do something similar. They got me into a coffee shop basically with a pretty girl via a pretty girl, and started plying me with full of their propaganda and everything. Obviously, it didn't take.
Yeah, I hung out at a lot of coffee shops in college and throughout my 20s, but it was because I was a slam poet, and most of your open mics, if not the slam poet, the slam event itself, were at a coffee shop. Usually slams would be at a bar because we're adults and we want to drink, but sometimes it would be. I spent a lot of time at coffee shops, and thankfully I just never went to the wrong one, I guess.
Right.
We were real hippies there, not the Jesus freaks. But this is an issue that's like all over the place now. Like the 12 tribes, they're in Canada now. They've expanded into Canada. They're in the UK now. They're in Spain. Australia just cracked down on the groups there, and hopefully the children will be pulled out of the communes in Australia. It looks like that's going to happen. 40 children were just pulled out of a commune in Germany because of the child abuse that happens. So it does seem like the governments of the world and the United States itself is focusing on this group and saying, hey, religion is protected, but this goes too far.
Yeah, you
What
would think
exactly-
that they would just give up the child abuse part, because that seems to be the thing that's getting them into real trouble. But you can hear this conversation going on amongst the leadership, right? It's like, well, if we just gave up the child abuse, but it's like, no, that's what we do. That's the core is the child abuse.
And they just pretend to give it up. They say they don't use the rod anymore, but they do.
Okay, I've never even heard of these guys. Are they just a religious cult, or what's the story?
Yeah, well, they're Messianic Christians. They're a religious cult. They used to be known just simply as the community or the Messianic communities. So they would go around calling themselves the community. They look like Amish people to me. So like if they just look like old school people from the old world wearing old world clothing that don't know what a razor is.
I just need to hear the community, and my cult flags go up straight away.
Yeah.
That is so culty.
Well, yeah, and their leader Eugene Spriggs, he calls himself. Well, he's dead now, but he called himself the prophet Yannick, and he had his Paul on the road to Damascus moment where God talked to him directly, he has revelations, and people treat his revelations as doctrine. He had revelations. He doesn't anymore because he's dead.
I'm looking
So
at a
basic-
picture
So
He's got the
basically,
full beard.
so basically, he's a lot more successful Jim Jones
Yeah. Oh yeah. He
With-
got
with-
away with
with-
it for 30 years, and he's
Without
spread
the
all over
Kool-Aid.
the world. Yeah. Yeah. They do have a tea though that's they use for recruitment techniques. That supposedly drugs you, and then they can do their cult thing and get you indoctrinated in. There's like when I first started covering this group, I talked about it in the stream yesterday. I got emails from all over the world, pictures sent to me from all over the world, pictures of this one guy in particular that they think is at the commune in the next town over, being hidden by this community. That this guy was supposedly drugged and kidnapped from a music festival, and now he's in this cult, indoctrinated, and nobody can find him. And I got so many of those of so many different people, like, we think that this cult has this person, or I haven't seen my son in 10 years ever since he went to their commune. Like it's absolutely insane how successful this group was able to operate for so long. Because I mean, it really wasn't until recently that even our government started looking at them.
So how does it exactly? Does anyone actually know how it is that do they drug them with some psychedelic or stuff and then just like mess with their head and tell them stuff and then suddenly believe them, or is it?
See,
is it
with the drugs,
people that
it's
are
never
easy to-
been proven. Nobody's ever been able to prove that they use drugs. There was a couple of journalists that talked about a milky tea that they refused, that they kept being offered. It's
You
just
see
kind
that.
of
This guy
whispers
gets it.
when it comes to the drug part of it,
Yeah.
But when it comes to like the recruitment and the brainwashing, they use torture on children. So essentially,
Very MK Ultra.
yeah, they start basically beating their babies at 6 months old with canes on the bottom of their feet.
Yeah, that's
And it's to break the spirit and to make them devoted to the group. And usually it's pretty successful by the age of 4 that they don't have to beat them after that.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering how they get adults to buy into this bullshit. That are they just very people that are easily suggestible? Can they spot those people?
I've actually talked to a bunch of people.
Milky tea.
I've talked to a bunch of people on this channel about cults, and cultists pick people. They choose people very carefully, and it's people who have who have poor connections in the world. People who are traveling, like when I was in London for that time, they pick people who are disconnected.
Yeah, and this guy
That's what it
Eugene
is.
Spriggs, for one, he got a degree in psychology, so he understands the human mind. He worked for PSYOPs in the army for a year. He was drafted and they put him in PSYOPs, so he did psychological evaluations on new recruits for a year, and then somehow just got out of the army after that. No, not a dishonorable discharge or not an honorable discharge. He just wasn't in the army anymore, supposedly. And then he went and worked as a guidance counselor at a high school. So this guy knows how to look for the aspects in people that he feels like he can manipulate. And he's been very, very successful at it. Like there's the story of an atheist he converted pretty much overnight, that they're so really super proud of. And she's been his wife. She was his wife for like 36 years. I mean, it's just, there's so much into this. And, I wonder, if he didn't continue with his PSYOPs after he left the army. Because as I said, the FBI didn't release anything on the 12 tribes until 2019. And this guy, he formed the 12 tribes in 1972. They went over 30 years, over almost 40 years of just getting away with pretty much murder. They're finding bodies of stillborn babies in Australia associated with the 12 tribes because they don't take their people to hospital.
But a little bit more on that, please. They don't take their people to hospital.
Yeah, they avoid the hospital at all costs. They don't believe in going to the hospital.
Well, it's a lot like what they call the Christian Science people, Christian Scientists, I think is what they called. Another sect. Apparently, in relation to 420, got the Metallica T-shirt. The lead singer of Metallica's parents, I think, were that, and he saw his mom die because his dad refused to take her to hospital. That they believed that the Lord would save him, and his mom died a lot younger than apparently she should have, because they refused to they didn't believe in medicine.
Yeah.
Two things
I
about
think,
Christian scientists.
Oh, go
One,
ahead.
you have Massachusetts to thank for that, with the Mother Church right here in Boston, everyone.
Mm.
And two,
Yeah.
in their defense, yeah, they're horrible. It's a horrible institution, but at least it was formed by a woman, and it wasn't based on some dude just wanting to get fucked.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
This is a problem, especially here in America, amongst like really evangelical, even parts of Christianity that wouldn't be considered so much a cult, just highly fundamental and evangelical. I know there's graveyards down in Utah, and I think also in Washington State, graveyards just filled with children that died either in birth or because they got some ailment, diabetes, something like that, and their parents just refused to take them to the doctor because God, God's plan, if God wants them to live, God will let them live.
Yeah.
It's really
they
fucked
actually
up.
sound like the Jehovah's Witnesses on steroids, basically.
It's religiosity is getting out of control, and I think it's kind of like a direct counterattack to the progressive nature that's just kind of overwhelmed the country over the last 40, 50 years, and they're punching back as much as they can, and they're digging themselves in, and they're quick to point the finger at liberals, say, oh, you guys live in an echo chamber in a bubble, but they're the ones that are bubbling themselves off and doing
It's like,
battle
dude,
with
you're
the new
living in
world.
a cult. You're living in a cult.
Who literally tells you not to talk to anybody outside of the cult.
Well, I was there was this Bill Maher at one of his live shows. He goes, listen, Muslims, Christians, all the others, Catholics, you've got it's built in. But how is it that these new religions are allowed to, like, he goes Mormons, you don't have a history. Bullshit. Like, you're a cult,
Yeah.
because you think about it, Mormonism was what, the
Mm.
50s or 60s or something it was formed.
Well,
Yeah,
it was in the early
how
to
they
mid-
control
19th
Utah is just straight fucked up. They rebelled against the United States of America, and we rewarded them with a goddamn state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
if it was up to them, they would have had their own country. They would have had their own theocratic country.
They wanted
Well,
their
what's-
own country.
like I haven't
And it's
I haven't
interesting.
really read up on Mormonism, sorry, and it just seems really like weird. Like, religion is weird, most of it. Mormonism just seems freaking out there.
I still want
What
some
were you
underwear,
gonna
man.
say, Sammy?
I want the underwear.
Sammy, what were you going to say?
Just putting the pieces together a little bit there with the how you said cults will hone in on a specific type of person. The JWs will go. They're all about grief. So they try and find people who have just lost somebody,
Yep.
where they can sort of throw out that paradise thing. And yeah, they will, like seagulls around
Yeah.
people in grief.
Yep. Yep.
And in those moments when people are at their lowest is when they are most susceptible
Yeah.
to the nonsense.
Yeah,
to their
I think using college campuses is a very targeted approach. So on a lot of these college campuses, you have people coming from rural areas, indoctrinated into deep religiosity, and they're being exposed to a different world, and their world is crumbling, right? So and it's being reformed by what they're learning.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect playground for predators to play on that, especially if you're well versed in the human psyche.
This is true because if you're going to get mentally ill, it will typically erupt between 18 to 25. That's when the brain matures at a rapid rate, and so that's why you have so much mental illness just kind of manifesting itself on college campuses because you're out of your normal support structure, and you're more prone to be mentally ill at that time too. So it's an ideal area to hunt for new people in the cult.
Yeah, and there's always that subculture here in America that's drawn to that type of lifestyle. It's ever since the 60s that's kind of been ingrained. I can't tell you how many young people I know that thinks they're 60s hippies, right? Like it's just that subculture that's kind of with us now, and it's still there, and it would be easy for them to draw people like that in.
You know,
I
that's why it's
actually-
important to do your. Go ahead, Glenn. I'm sorry.
I was actually saying my one of my my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses is they came to the door, and at that point I'm just too nice to tell them to go, like things. So they go, "Are you religious?" And I tell them like, "I'm like my mom's Jewish, so I'm whatever." And then they continue to talk to me, and my dad comes to the door, and they go, and he asks, "What's happening here?" And they go, "Oh, we're talking to your son about God." He goes, "Fuck off." And that got him out pretty damn quickly, and he did what I didn't really have the guts to do, because I'm just a lot of times I'm too nice for my own good, so
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when they come to my door and they're like, "Let me tell you about Jesus," and I'm like, "Let me tell you about atheism," they leave pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, next time it's just I should just say
They're
next time,
looking for
hail
soft
Satan.
targets.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah, they're looking for soft targets. That's what they are. They're not looking
Yeah.
for, because it's a waste of time and energy. So they're
Yeah.
just going to find someone that they can pull pretty easily.
Yeah,
The NIV talks about it, like they'll because they go knocking, they call it soul hunting or whatever they call it, but they go knocking on doors, and the moment like an obviously gay person or a trans person were to come and answer that door, it's like, we're out. This is a waste of time. Yeah.
that's another way. So if I see Jehovah's Witnesses, I should slip on my girlfriend's teddy.
Yeah, that seems
Do
to
you,
work.
do you
yeah.
want to know something that probably most people don't realize about the witnesses? Is that any of these acts, they would actually perceive as most likely not you,
Yeah.
but the devil controlling you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the same breath, they'll tell you how God gives you free will, and God's not responsible for any of the evil or even the devil himself because of
Listen,
free will. And
listen,
yet the devil can
actually-
control you.
It's funny because the witnesses in that sense don't believe in free will.
Good for them. It's not biblical.
Well, the thing is, they believe that we're under Satan's control. So, and unless you have Jehovah's safety bubble,
But you see, sorry.
yeah, then
Yeah.
Satan can do what he wants.
But doesn't according to if you have free will, but then a lot of them believe that your whole life is mapped out by God. How do you have free will if your whole life is mapped out by God?
I have
Just
no
asking.
idea how they get there.
The
because it
Calvinists
makes
seem to
no
have the most
sense.
honest. The Calvinists seem to have the most honest answer: is that God's grace keeps sin down to a manageable rate for what God does, and that the elect are determined at the beginning of time, and if you're not one of the elect, fuck you.
Hey,
It's very terrific and clean.
basically, the witness approach is God has to answer the challenge to his authority once and for all.
Long enough.
I just wanted to jump in just to tell you a funny story that happened to me with the Jehovah's Witness.
All right, Bob.
I had a knock on my door. It's going back a few years ago now. And I'm saying I'm polite. I don't tell them to sort off or anything. I actually invite them in to talk to me. So this one time, the Jehovah's Witness turned up, knocked on the door. I opened the door. Obviously, they were talking. I says, "Oh, come in." So they walked in, and as they both walked past, I closed the door, locked it, took the key out, and put it in my pocket. Absolutely terrified the life out of them. And I had to apologise. I had to say, I'm joking. I put the key back in and opened the door and said, "Look, it is unlocked." The wife went mad. She says, "Don't you ever do that to him again." She says, "You absolutely terrified him."
Yeah.
Gonna make
They
you
put their
reproduce so we can
fucking
eat your
children in
baby's
these.
brains.
Oh, this is a good point. What were you
situations.
going to say that, Sam? Yeah, they put their kids into this door-to-door stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, NIV does. It would shock me. Like, we don't have like a JW problem. I remember it as kids, like they'd come to our door, but I don't never see them around anymore. I'm not sure what happened to them here. But the NIV, they'll put their 4-year-olds right in there. Like, this is sympathy right here.
Sorry. Sorry. What?
NIV, Steven Anderson, his flock.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
My mother nearly got talked into the Jehovah's Witness. Like I said, my parents were never really religious, but when I was a young child, the Jehovah's Witnesses used to come and talk to my mother. And because my dad was at work and obviously my sister was at school, I think there was only me at home at the time. I'd have only been 4 or 5 years old. And vaguely remember him coming and talking to my mother. And my dad was like, well, he wasn't interested, but whatever my mother was interested in, he thought, whatever. So they used to come round periodically all the time. And in the end, they basically wanted to sign her up. And for some reason, I think they needed my father there while they would, to sign her up, or they wanted to speak to my dad. So when they were speaking to my dad, I think they had to sort of like pay so much per month or whatever out of his wages, and he basically says, "You can fuck off." And that's
Is that what it part of the Jehovah's Witnesses that you have? Is that they more or less garnish like a percentage of your wages every month?
I mean, I was just a young child. I just remember my dad telling me that about my mother, and as soon as it got to the bit where about so much of his wages or whatever, he basically told him he can fuck off, and basically took him out of the house and they never came back again.
So Sammy, you were involved or still involved somewhat, with your family. So what's the deal? Is there a fee?
It differs from place to place. I think long ago it was probably a bit more stricter, but they make out like there's no obligation anymore, and all donations are anonymous. So there's a donation box at the back of the congregation.
Yeah.
But you're still expected to give, a good portion. And they'll guilt trip you about it constantly. So, there's no rule, but it's expected.
Sure.
And honestly, it's biblical, right? Like, I mean,
Yep.
Most Christians follow Paul and not Jesus, but Jesus went around saying, "Hey, give your shit to the poor, man."
But see, that's how if you look in their little pamphlets that they write specifically for the public, you'll see there's no collection plate handed around, no money taken, no obligation. So they, by not saying a set amount or, putting that obligation, they can claim that, well, we don't ask for money. But I can tell you, just Australia, 29 million last year in donations.
Was that the Jehovah's Witnesses? Yeah. Are
The
they
Australian branch?
Yeah. Are they? I'm assuming they get tax free. Because they're a religious organization. They fall under the tax free, the tax exempt status in the US, right?
It. Yeah.
I mean,
they almost lost it recently.
In the US?
No, Australia.
Oh, okay. But I mean, in the US, they're tax exempt status, right?
Oh, everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere. The 12 Tribes cult has tax exempt status here in the United States.
So they get tax exempt status to abuse children. Great.
Yeah. And and all of it went to Eugene Spriggs, every single dime. Like, in order to join the cult, you have to give Eugene Spriggs or the community everything you own.
Does that include my credit card debt? Because I see a scam coming on my part.
Yeah.
Hey,
Can I
listen.
legally give you all my maxed out credit cards? Because that would be great.
So
I saw this meme. And it's perfect. It goes when I have kids, I'm not gonna give them any religious thing. I'm gonna let them choose whether they want to be Jedi or Trek.
Right.
I don't necessarily have an issue with the tax exempt status. I have an issue with the unlimited tax exempt status, right? Like, if you're going to run a church, you should have some freedom to operate with your money. But once you start making a certain amount of profit, then kind of it's almost like, what the fuck? And then, as you said, like, if you're one of these more fundamental groups and then they're violating law within that religious structure, then it shouldn't even be allowed at all.
It should be transparency. It should be transparency with how much money you're coming in and what you're doing with your money.
Yeah,
Well,
the tax exemption should be on what goes to charity to help other people. If they're making a profit on it, they should pay tax on that profit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, the thing is, this is I had this discussion with my cousin, who's a preacher out in Edmonton, and he was saying that most churches don't operate on a profit. Most of them, because most of the money they get goes back into the church, which helps out the local community. It's the issue. It's the ones like, those mega churches like Joel Osteen and, all those guys that that somehow can justify their second private jet because their only one is not enough,
I mean, that's a nice opinion, but unless there's some kind of way to verify that about most churches not being at a profit, I'd be like, oh, maybe you're right, maybe you're not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, they pay for their pastors, right? So like, my uncle's a minister in the Wesleyan Church, and they do a lot of charity work. They make big congregation. There's a lot of money, and they basically pay for him to live a really comfortable lifestyle. A very, dude doesn't really want for anything. He does have a wife who works. She has a good job. I mean, they're fairly wealthy people. But it's more the prosperity preachers that I think I have a major issue with. When you're bringing in millions upon millions and you're getting jets and mansions off of your parishioners' false beliefs, I think that is a definite issue. Yeah.
You see, my issue. My issue again. One problem is that church and state are not supposed to mix. Yet these people are preaching politics from the pulpit, and that is where if everyone says, "Oh well, the IRS had that thing against conservatives." Well, maybe we should be investigating. The IRS should be investigating people, and they lose their tax exempt status if they start preaching politics.
Yeah, well, and that's how it used to be. So preachers all across America, they still did it, but they had to be really careful with their words, and they pretty much had to do it on home visits, shit like that. Trump and Mike Pence obliterated the Johnson Act, I believe it was called, and now it's perfectly fine for preachers to stand behind their pulpits and preach politics. Yeah.
Well, wasn't it, like Paula White, like, Jesus, I like all of those. Like, they're all just as bad as each other. But I actually find it comical when they start to speak in like tongues and stuff like that. And I go, how do people actually believe this bullshit? Like, really? Like, how stupid you have to be? Like, God. Be religious if you want, but you got to draw a line at stupidity at some point. Like, there's,
it's like. They're literally calling God a baby because, like, whenever they talk in tongues, they sound like little fucking baby gibberish, and it's like you think God's a fucking baby.
Yeah. Well, it's like
people do believe in weird things. We as Michael Shermer said, we have bad brains, and when you're brought up with in a system that incentivizes squirrely thinking, I guess that's a nice way of putting it, squirrely thinking. Then you grow up thinking these weird, bizarre thoughts. I mean, that's what happened to me. I mean, I was brought up thinking that demons and angels were real, and it took a lot of dedication on my part towards skepticism, figuring out what the truth is, what reality is, to get me out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was. You see, the thing is, I think, was it somehow Obama was the Antichrist, but a guy who cheated on every single one of his wives, one of them while she was with a porn star while she was pregnant, or raising their kid. He gets a mulligan for that. Like, he genuinely, like, they just said, we'll give you a mulligan, And the worst one is Mike Pence. Mike Pence is worse because he actually stood by him. He actually agreed to be like.
He gave up any pretense of like actually believing the bullshit he says.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's so fucked up. He won't be in a room. He won't be in a room without woman and alcohol and without his wife
now.
There. Yeah, and doesn't
he's with mother?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Doesn't he call his wife mother? And that for me, that frankly is the most fucked up thing. When you call your significant other mother, you lose any semblance of like. I can't speak to that. I can just no.
He's of that old guard. Here in America, evangelical men used to be able to take the belt and spank their wives.
Oh, yeah.
They can't do that. They're not supposed to be able to do that anymore. I'm sure some do. But
well, you know what? Maybe if someone had done that to fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe she wouldn't be so fucked up.
Well, I don't think hitting is the answer. Call me a radical liberal, but
Wait,
hitting
in certain
actually-
situations, maybe they need it.
I think with
in
Marjorie,
emergency
the problem is that
situations,
she,
pull the kid out of the road. Sure, but
I think
otherwise,
she had to be dropped as a baby, and I think the hard hit to the head is the issue.
Hey, listen.
she's just a
I'm-
scammer, or she's just a scammer, and this is the scam she's running.
I'm not saying that she fell or that she fell off the stupid tree and hit every branch on the way down twice or 10 times, but that's a high probability.
Well, in all seriousness, I don't think she's a scammer. I don't even necessarily think she's stupid. I just think she's gullible. And I definitely think that, because she started talking about Q when Q first came on. She's been a Q person since the very beginning. And she's just one of those. She fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. She believes it hardcore. It's the stupid ass people that elected this conspiracy theorist into Congress that's the issue. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's just her. Like, I believe in Q. What the fuck y'all expect from me?
You see, the thing is,
I just want to mention this for a second, is that the Skeptical Inquirer event on Facebook last night, Mick West, the person who wrote the book about talking to people who are in cults. What was interesting about Q is that this Q kept on doing these drops. Mm-hmm. And so there was always this new information, which made it more difficult to actually talk to people about Q because they were constantly getting new false information in, as against like 9/11 truthers. 9/11 truthers, all the information is out there. That's not changing. But with this Q cult, new information was always dropping. So that made it more difficult to actually reach out to them.
Donald Trump played into it. Several times he mentioned Q. Several times he instead of saying you, he would say Q. And they picked right up on that. And Donald Trump, like, he has these strategists around him. Like, we know for a fact that Q was not, with the Trump campaign. Could have been involved with them, sure, as the creators of 8chan, and Steve Bannon and that whole media network definitely probably had links into the Trump administration to be able to drop these drops and be as accurate as they were. But like Trump played to it. So Trump's people were picking up on that, and it just gave legitimacy to the things that this motherfucker was saying.
But you see, the thing is that Trump has been playing to conspiracy theories for years. It didn't start with there were thousands of Muslims dancing on 9/11 in New Jersey. It started. I think he probably just was going, how far can I push it? And when he tested the waters with the birther movement, and then he pushed it. And the thing is, he played to him because, like, I think, like, in some ways, Donald Trump's incredibly stupid. Like, he's got the reading and vocabulary capacity of a 5-year-old, but he's also not. In some ways, he's really smart. He's really smart. He knows how to play people.
He's been manipulating media for 30 fucking years at least, man.
Well, and the way he played, he genuinely thought that hooking onto Q would get him a second term. It failed miserably.
You know what else is supposedly smart though, Glenn?
What? Who? Sorry.
Fucking Weasel. The Weasel.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to drop that.
I'll just go back to something that was mentioned. I've just been searching on the internet to try and find it when you're talking about the separation of church and state. I mean, obviously, in the UK, we don't have separation of church and state. Our Queen is leader of the Church of England, and we have 26 seats in the Houses of Parliament, which are permanently set aside for members of the church. Now, these people aren't voted in. So we don't have separation of church and state. But however, the difference that I see is when your politicians come on the TV, they can talk about God, Jesus, Christianity, the Bible, and stuff like that, and everybody accepts it. Now, in this country, they don't. Nigel Farage was elected leader of the SDP, Social Democratic Party, in 2015. In 2017, he had to resign due to his religious beliefs. And this is the statement they put out. From the very first day of my leadership, I have faced questions about my Christian faith. I've tried to answer with grace and patience. Sometimes my answers could have been wiser. At the start of this election, I found myself under scrutiny again, asked about matters to do with my faith. I felt guilty that this focus was distracting attention from our campaign, obscuring our messages. Journalists have the right to ask what they see fit. The consequence of the focus of my faith is that I have found myself torn between living as a faithful Christian and serving as a political leader. A better, wiser person than me may have been able to deal with these more successfully. To have remained faithful to Christ while leading a political party in the correct environment. To be a political leader, especially of a progressive liberal party in 2017, and to live as a committed Christian, to hold faithful to the Bible's teaching, has felt impossible for me. So basically, he resigned. So due to his religious beliefs and it being out in the open, he felt that he had no option but to resign, because basically people in this country, like I've said, they're not interested in religion. So it's completely different to what yours is. Yours should be like that because you've got separation of church and state.
Well,
we haven't. So you'd think we'd be the opposite, but we're not.
To speak to that, it's similar here in Australia. In fact, we're often surprised to find out what our Prime Minister's denomination is.
Exactly. Same with Tony Blair. When he retired, Tony Blair, he was a Catholic, but nobody knew when he was in power.
Which I always thought was great. Now, the problem is that I've come to realise is that not being out in the open with that is that we don't know what interests they're serving. Because in Australia, the general public keep religion, no one talks about it. No one knows what anyone else's religion is. You know, you don't ask people their political leaning or their religion. That's it.
Yeah, it sounds very much similar
the politicians
in the UK.
And the people in power are very conservative and religious, and it's religious bodies that seem to have their fingers in everything at the top.
I just want to bounce off what Paul was.
Sorry.
I just want to bounce off what Paul was saying is about why Britain, why most common, why most advanced, not even advanced, but developed economies, industrialized, post-industrialized economies are more secular than the United States of America. And that is one fucking reason. And that's because of universal health care. I'll say this. We have real universal health care in the United States of America within a generation. Even though religiosity is cratering right now, it will just accelerate that process.
Okay.
Because when people when people feel safe, they don't become religious.
I got a question just for you, Andy, and for the other American on. What do you think is going to happen first? A gay president or an atheist president?
Gay.
Yeah.
Not even a problem with that.
We can't get atheists elected in this country. If you're a known atheist, like I was highly involved in the Democratic Party. Once it became known that I was an atheist, shit changed real quick.
Yeah.
We've only had 2 Catholic presidents so far, and one of them was shot in the head. We've yet to see what happens to Joe Biden. So that's just Catholic.
Yeah. You see the stereotypes about Jewish people. You think all these people would want to elect a Jewish president because they're good with money. Apparently, like.
Honestly, like the only reason Mitt Romney lost was because he was Mormon. A lot of Republican evangelicals just wouldn't vote for him because he was a Mormon. Because at that point, like Obama was sitting really dead in the water. He didn't have the energy that he had in 2008.
Was it? I don't remember it actually ever be. Was it ever actually that close? Like, was there a chance that Obama was actually going to get defeated?
Yeah, I think Romney almost won that election.
There was a chance.
There's a meme I seen the other day. It said, "I love your Australian accent. Let me hear you say something." And the response is,
"Here it comes."
Yeah, nah, you're a fuck cunt, eh?
I wanted to comment on the separation of church and state here in America. I mean, because like it really hasn't ever really existed. Our founding fathers didn't hammer it home. It's not in our Constitution, which is often the argument that preachers will use. And religion is deeply protected under under the Constitution. So I believe it was Thomas Jefferson letters that Thomas Jefferson wrote when he was president that pretty much talks about states' rights. I could be wrong about that. It could be earlier than that.
No,
and I
it
think
was
it's
well.
been-
When we do
Go
have
ahead.
the Establishment Clause, of course.
Yeah, we
in
have the
fi-
Establishment Clause, and it has been ruled constitutional by Supreme Courts several times, I believe.
And ironically, Jefferson was supporting and defending Baptists in Virginia because they were running up because they were a religious minority back then,
Yeah.
and they were running up against trouble from the Church of England or the Anglican Church or the Episcopalian Church, however they branded themselves at the time. So he really developed some of his ideas about the separation of church and state while defending Baptists of all people.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
what wasn't? Oh, sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
kind
I'm
of
sorry.
it's always kind of been a flaw in our system that's given way too much power to religion. Is my ultimate point.
Yeah.
But wasn't it at one point that because a lot of religious people use the Constitution and the amendments and all that stuff, but nowhere in the Constitution does it mention God, if I'm not mistaken.
There's
Like
no
actual-
there's nothing in the Constitution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So-
No Jesus. No Jesus there.
Yeah.
Can
There
I
is-
ask the Americans? So, do you think then? I think the answer is probably obvious, but would it be a woman president over a gay president? Would be the preference?
I prefer a woman gay president, but I don't know.
But who do you think America would go with?
It looks like
What's
ahead,
his
Rach.
face?
if
Really
it was
popular.
down to those two options.
The moderate dude, what's his name? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
you want an atheist lesbian woman as president, and it will make
Because
all
if-
the fundamental Christians' heads explode in the USA, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the
Yes.
answer's not as obvious as I thought, but I thought it would be a woman over a gay man.
Well, I would have said that until the what's his name just ran the kid guy that everybody loves him, even fucking Republicans
Okay.
love him.
Well, that's
Buttigieg, right?
Yeah.
okay.
Mayor Pete.
So if
Mayor-
can I just say then, if you do get a gay president, that America will basically have said, man, and you've even had a black president above a woman,
Yeah.
then a gay president, then a woman president. Just think about that.
Well, the thing is this is I think it could have. I think if it hadn't been Donald Trump running, I think Hillary Clinton probably wins, and Hillary Clinton would have.
Yeah.
Like, she was-
Trump, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
See, I'm not
And-
so sure because I still think that there is a bias here in America against women
Who
in
would-
positions
who
of
did-
power.
Who did Trump beat to be the runner?
Oh, he
Oh,
fucking
he
beat
beat a
everyone.
whole bunch of
He
people.
fucking
Everybody.
trashed a bunch of Republican heavies. He just like that's what
So
made me think he
you
was
couldn't
going to win.
really-
He just
Well,
trashed.
So you
I
couldn't
think
say
that
who
Hillary
would've-
Clinton it was just a historically weak candidate and always was. I think if we're gonna run a woman, she needs to be strong in her convictions, and I think she'll win easily.
Do you think it's Elizabeth?
You know-
That could be Elizabeth Warren.
I
Or
think
she-
Elizabeth Warren could win definitely. I myself am for AOC. I'm for AOC. I think a young, vibrant, strong-minded woman with new ideas is perfect.
Yeah.
And she's like Bernie. You either love her or you hate her, but you know who she is, right?
Yeah. You see, the problem
I
is
just want to say this for a minute about Hillary is that the reason why Hillary lost is because she sucks at running national campaigns.
Yeah.
You know,
well, she didn't go to Wisconsin once.
Obama was able to outflank her basically in all these caucuses when he was running against her. So she runs a flat-footed campaign, and Donald Trump, if nothing, is a storm of chaos. And that model of running a campaign was able to beat her flat-footed. I cannot change in the pocket. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to run the same campaign I've always run, and that is a losing fucking strategy right there.
I think
Well,
I think
I
if the
think-
Hillary Clinton that was the first lady would have ran after Bill Clinton left, I think she would have dominated it because back then she was a woman for her convictions. The problem with her is she got beat down over universal health care, and she bowed to the corporations and the donors. And
Well, she wanted universal health care when he was in office, didn't she?
She fought hard for it, and she got
Yeah.
not only by Newt Gingrich and his Republicans, but but the Democrats just brutalized that woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
And
It's
you
true.
know, honestly, it's I look at it and I look at whoever was her campaign chair should never work in politics again, because how do you not go to swing states? She didn't visit Wisconsin once, apparently, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
that was the thing. There was states she didn't visit. That, well, you know, let's forget the Electoral College, how stupid the Electoral College is. Sorry if anyone actually likes it, but it's where you can lose by 3 million votes, but win. But she basically lost the election by, what was it? Some people estimate 75,000, because between the swing states cost her, and she lost them by a total of 75,000 votes. So, you know,
Republicans can't win national elections. I mean, in terms of presidential elections, and they know that. That's why they're doing all of these voting restrictions.
It's the closest election in U.S. history, and it was determined by Russian propaganda in our media, and that's why they are just so turned off at the very mention of it, because it was an illegitimate presidency from the very beginning. Hillary lost because of foreign interference in our election, pure and simple. I mean,
well,
you can't look at it and see otherwise.
Oh no, I'm not saying there wasn't foreign interference, but if she'd run a proper campaign, she probably would have won.
Oh yeah.
I'll go with Glenn on this. I gotta tell you, Rage and I, we've been bantering back and forth throughout the, when Chris was still doing the show. I remember having these conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that 3 days before the election, if something drops and you have a man saying grab him by the pussy, that you should have like a dog should have won that fucking election. But here in America, I think that there's a bias against women in power still. And misogynist ass men just would not vote for her for no matter whatever.
I
fucking
never
reason.
got past that fucking thing. I never got past it.
And it was,
if you go to court for grabbing someone's genitals without their consent, and you said, "Yeah, I did it," you would be charged with sexual assault. So he openly likes to sexually assault people, and
there's over 20 women that have come forward that he has, and one of them,
and that was before he was president.
And one of them, apparently, it just never made it. It was like a big, kind of a not a big story, but there was a woman that said that when she was 13 or 14, she was at one of Epstein's parties and Trump raped her. She was 14.
Yeah, that was all pushed under the rug when he became president.
Yeah, like and that's why everyone, all the people that said that, the Clintons had Epstein murdered. Well, Trump had plenty of reason to have that done too.
Yeah, and Trump had the power at the time. Like if anybody had Epstein murdered, I mean, I just don't know. Like I don't usually just fall into any conspiracy theory. I want to think that there's some rationality behind it. Like, inmates do understand when they're not being watched and when to do things. But I don't know. But if anybody did it and anybody had the power to do it, it was Donald Trump.
and let's face it. When Epstein's girlfriend was arrested, Trump goes, "I'm wishing her the best." That's just know that if you do release a black book, you're next.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because I'm sorry, there's no way Trump's not involved. And like I don't know. There's talk that there's a chance that Clinton's involved as well. Dershowitz is up to his ears, up to his fucking ears in that shit.
I know you got to end, Andy, but I think that, it's the sad thing about QAnon. The saddest thing is that they perpetuate this myth about this pedophilia, when actual pedophilia and sex child rings are a problem, but it steers away the eyes from the real problem and points at the enemy instead of looking at the real problem. Because Epstein did blow it all up. Like there is a huge power hungry thing out there that is very interested in sexual slavery.
Yeah.
All right, that's a great place to end, everyone. Cheery note.
Have a good weekend, guys. Have an awesome weekend, guys.
Yeah, I'm doing.
That's a terrible place.
I've got my bottle of JG on order. It's coming this evening, so I'm ready.
But if we all
Enjoy.
do this,
Seriously, guys, thanks for coming on the show. Everyone in the chat,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on. I'm doing stuff this weekend on the channel. I don't know what, but I'm doing things. If nothing else, I'll be here on Monday doing this
All right.
whole crazy show. Thanks, guys.
Have a good weekend.